Here are 7 things you should never say in a job interview. So if you have any interviews coming up, make sure you watch this whole video so you don't accidentally say something that may end up getting you rejected. And if you want more interviewing tips just like this, make sure you click subscribe down below because I post weekly free career advice up on my channel. When it comes to interviewing for a job, there's a lot of things that you need to remember, like what are all the different stories that you want to tell, what did you write on your resume, how to use the STAR interview method, how to answer behavioral and hypothetical questions. But on top of all those things, there are 7 things you definitely should not say in a job interview because these things could lead to getting you rejected even though you've done everything else correctly. And the first thing that you should never say in a job interview is that you weren't actually looking for a job and someone just messaged you on LinkedIn and now you're interviewing for this position. You shouldn't actually say that that's why you are interviewing for this position because it's going to show the interviewer or the hiring manager that you have a very low level of interest and nobody wants to hire somebody who's not really excited about working for them. Now, the second thing you should never talk about or say during a job interview is anything related to promotions. So you shouldn't be asking them during the interview, what is the promotion process like? Or typically, how long does someone have to wait before they can get a promotion? Now, I know that these are very important questions that you're going to want to know in terms of your career growth and opportunity at this particular company, but these are not questions you should be asking during a job interview. I always recommend that you only ask these questions at the end of the interview process after you've already received a verbal offer. The reason why you don't want to ask this during the job interview is because you're going to show a level of disinterest to your hiring manager or the recruiter. They're going to think that you actually don't want this position and you really want the position after this. Or if it's your boss, they're thinking that you just want to replace them and you actually want to get their position. You don't really care about the job and responsibilities that they're hiring for right now. This sometimes may also be construed that you are too good for the job that they are currently offering you, and this could lead to getting you rejected without you even knowing. Another thing you should never say during a job interview is if they ask you any interview question related to what are your weaknesses. You should never respond by saying, I don't have any weaknesses. I am the perfect candidate and you should hire me. Although it may be tempting to turn your answer into a bit of a funny joke and to kind of admit that you are the perfect candidate for the role, that's not the point of the interview question. They ask you these questions because they want to see, do you have a level of self-awareness and are you constantly striving for improvement? So when they ask you this interview question, you should be able to talk about at least one area of improvement for you. That way you can show them that you recognize where some of your faults and weaknesses may be, but you already are working proactively to address these and become a better employee. Now, if you want a better deep dive on how to answer this interview question, I have a full video on how to answer what are your strengths and weaknesses that you can check out right over here. Another thing that you should never say or ask during a job interview is anything related to internal transfers or switching teams. Even though you may be really interested in changing your career later on, or maybe trying out a different product area or working on a different team within that company, when you are doing an interview for a specific job, you should not ask them about the internal transfer process. I have actually made this mistake once in my career where I was interviewing for a campus recruiting role and I was asking how long do I have to stay in this role before I can switch into a full-time executive recruiting role instead. And of course, I never got the job, even though I feel like I interviewed extremely well for that position. The reason why is because you are showing a huge level of disinterest in the current job that they are hiring for. And of course, when any company hires somebody to do a job, they're going to be spending a lot of time and money to train you and bring you up to speed. And they don't want to hire somebody who doesn't really want to be there and plans on leaving in a year or so. So if you are interested in transferring internally or want to know if it's even possible at that company, I recommend you save these questions until the very end once you do get that job offer. You can ask these questions while you're contemplating about whether or not you should accept. Another thing that you should never say during a job interview, and this one actually is pretty common, is you should never tell them, I don't have any questions. So at the end of each interview, usually the interviewer will be kind enough to ask you, do you have any questions for me? You should always have questions prepared. It just shows that you're really interested and invested in that company and you are taking their opportunity seriously. If you tell them, nah, I'm good, I don't have any questions for you, bye, they're going to assume that you don't really want this position because you're not doing your due diligence to make sure that this is a good fit for you. Remember, everything during your interview is part of the interview, including when they ask you if you have questions. So make sure you come prepared with intelligent questions that can sometimes also showcase your skill set. Another huge mistake that I see people make during a job interview is when you get asked a difficult interview question and you don't know how to answer it right away, you should not say, "Oh, I don't know an answer. Can we go to another question and come back to this later?" Or you should definitely never say, "Sorry, I don't really have an answer for this question." When it comes to an interview, no matter how difficult the question is, even if it's something you've never been prepared for or ever been asked, you should still never openly admit during the interview that you don't know how to answer the question or that you should skip it entirely and come back to it. I know there's a lot of advice out there on the internet and on YouTube saying that this is okay, but I'm telling you, as a recruiter and a hiring manager, if anyone ever tells me that they don't know how to answer a question, that's probably a good sign that you're not going to move forward in the process. Just because it's an interview, so you should have at least some answer or give it a try at least to answer any difficult interview question that comes to you. Most likely, all these interview questions that are being asked are related to the job itself. And so if you don't know how to answer the question, it's going to show them that you also don't know how to do the job. And the last thing you should never say or do in a job interview is repeat the same answers or stories to different interview questions. Even if you're interviewing with a different person, you should never tell the same story or give the same example more than once. Even if you have a really good project or story that you're super proud of that has a very impactful result that you know will impress interviewers, you should never use that story more than once. Because even across all of your different interviews, all the interviewers will be taking notes and sharing and talking about your answers afterwards. And if you use the same example multiple times, they're going to know that. And it's going to show them that you really actually haven't done a variety of projects, or you really don't have a lot of experience because you have to keep talking about the same thing over and over again. So make sure you do a quick inventory of all of the projects and all the work you've done in your career and practice telling those stories using the STAR method. So when it comes to interviewing, you have multiple different stories to tell across all of your interviews. All right, so now you know 7 things that you should never do or say during a job interview because these can lead to getting you rejected. So if you have been rejected for a role that you applied for recently and you thought you did really well and are surprised that you didn't get a job offer, you could have possibly have said one of these things in this video. If you found this to be helpful, make sure you drop a like below and maybe share it with a friend so they know what not to say during a job interview. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.